The Edmonton Oilers are most certainly not out of the woods after tonight's 3-0 loss to the Montreal Canadiens. Unpacking all of it on today's edition of Locked On Oilers.
You are Locked On Oilers, your daily podcast on the Edmonton Oilers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's edition of Locked On Oilers. I'm your host, Nick Zararis. I want to thank everyone who's making Locked On Oilers their first listen of the day. Locked On Oilers, a part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And today's show is brought to you by Indeed. Still searching for a great candidate for your company? Don't search. Match with Indeed. So today's show, we are going to unpack the Oilers' 3-0 loss in Montreal to the Canadiens because I'm just going to come out and say it. That was a weird loss. They didn't play terribly. Montreal didn't play amazing, but over the course of the game, it kind of worked against the Oilers, the flow of the game. There wasn't a lot of room. The Canadiens did a pretty amicable job, respectable job of playing good defense, limiting what the Oilers were going to be able to do and forcing the Oilers to really work for offense. And when you have a game like this, it makes you need to take a step back. And that's what we're going to do. So our first segment, we're going to analyze this purely from the perspective of what the Oilers are doing in the non-McDavid Draisaitl minutes. Now, they were down 1-0 in the third period, so they loaded up. They went McDavid, Draisaitl, Hyman with Ekholm and Bouchard for much of the third period. So we're going to talk about it through that lens. Our second segment, we're going to pull up the maps. We're going to show you where the shots on goal come from, where the two Montreal goals come from, with the sequence that led up to them using this little tool. One of my friends showed me that's pretty cool. That's useful as far as diagramming plays. And then in our final segment, we're going to take a big step back and we're going to talk about how concerned or not concerned we need to be after another frustrating loss. So let's start here. Montreal's not a good hockey team. Montreal is a team that is banking on potential, that isn't expected to win anything this year, that is waiting for players to blossom, that has some young, interesting players. You know, it was good to get an honest look at Lane Hudson. I thought he moved pretty well out there. I thought he looked the part of tantalizing offensive defenseman. Nick Suzuki's been in the league a while now. Slavkovsky put together a really solid second season last year. He's still pretty good. And they're in a weird place, Montreal. They are kind of, I'm going to say they're kind of like a Walmart version. Actually, no, that's not fair to them, in all honesty. They're like a good version of what happens if you're Detroit. You know, Montreal hasn't picked incredibly high. The one player they did pick that high in Slavkovsky hasn't really popped off yet. But this is the type of game that even a limping Oilers team, and make no mistake, I know they'd won a couple games in a row. They've played relatively well. You lost to Toronto on Saturday night, but you played reasonably well in that game. You felt like you were starting to make some progress. And then tonight, you got slowed down. You got in the mud with a team that was really well structured, that really made you work. And we're going to talk about that more in the second segment. But when you go and look at the box score from the game tonight, you're going to be astounded when you see some of the results. Not a lot of shots on goal, not a lot of opportunities. And it's not like the Canadiens are a lockdown defensive team. You know, to finish with 30 shots on goal feels a little bit light. And the Oilers had some puck possession early in this game. But as we always talk about here on Locked On Oilers, this is a team that needs to play with the lead. When they have to start cheating for offense, when they have to start compromising defensively, they're not going to be able to make as much happen for them. And, you know, it directly leads to the second Montreal goal that Draisaitl's trying to cheat his way up the ice, and him and McDavid converge on the same point. Montreal ends up winning that puck, and all of the leverage in the defensive structure is on the one side of the ice. So the Canadiens are able to leak someone down the back door and get a shot over the defenseman's right shoulder. So taking a step back, and you go and look, and I'm going to click over here to the updated box score. I'm assuming this is final now. Yes. Okay, good. The stat tracking websites on occasion won't update till a few minutes after the game, but clicking on over to the Oilers individual, to the individual scoring chances. So This is Natural Stat Trick as of 10:25 p.m. The game is reported over. The Oilers have Brett Kulak with 4 shots on goal. 4 scoring chances. Corey Perry with 4 scoring chances. Ryan Nugent-Hopkins with 4 scoring chances. Jeff Skinner with 3. Vasily Podkolzin with 3. Adam Henrique with 2. Derek Ryan with 2. Evan Bouchard with 2. Joshua Brown with 2. Ty Emberson with 2. Zach Hyman with 2. Connor Brown with 1. Matthias Ekholm with 1. Matthias Janmark with 1. And Travis Dermott with 1. No shots on, no scoring, individual scoring chances generated from McDavid or Draisaitl, which tells me that they were making a conscious effort. And I will give credit to Montreal. They pointed it out on the broadcast that Nick Suzuki was doing a pretty solid job of shadowing McDavid, of staying with him, of following him along. And look, you got to take a step back and say, they got us. It sounds crazy to say, but Montreal did a great job tonight limiting what McDavid and Draisaitl could do. We're going to look at the shot maps for the Oilers and the Canadiens in the next segment, and I'm going to show you where the bulk of the shots for the Oilers came from and who took them. And I say this with the utmost respect for professional hockey players, but if we're going through games where Brett Kulak's going to have the most shots on goal on our team, most individual scoring chances on our team, that's not a game we're probably going to win, because that means we're taking shots from the outside, because Kulak's not very aggressive with pinching, because that's not his game. I wouldn't expect him to make that his game. And when you're a team that's kind of in a funk, funk's probably not fair considering they've played reasonably well in their last 10, but they're not playing what they want to. They are not living by their identity. They are not getting to their game. They are very reactionary. They are very disjointed. It's a lot of individuals making individual plays, and that's hard to do on a sustainable basis. I've talked about that idea a bunch through the early phases of the season, because it's true. Even with a Connor McDavid, even with a Draisaitl, with a Bouchard, with a Hyman, these are great players. Some of the best players in the entire league at their respective positions. But when you are asking them on a nightly basis, hey, we need you to make a play happen pretty much by yourself, even the greats are going to have a hard time doing that all of the time. There's not a lot of room for error when you're playing with such an aggressively top-heavy roster, especially when you're going to load up Draisaitl and McDavid on the same line. Because when you put McDavid and Draisaitl on the same line, that's telling me we are dominating those minutes. We are going to do everything in our power to win the game in those minutes. And then whatever else happens, we'll figure it out as we go. And it's frustrating because they played reasonably well. I'm looking at the box score now. They don't have the Natural Stat Trick doesn't have the stats for Draisaitl, McDavid, Hyman, because that was relatively late in the game. But McDavid, Nugent, Hopkins, Hyman was 5-1 in scoring chances. No goals against, no goals for. They won the expected goals battle 100-0. They had 2.2. They had 0.27 expected goals. They didn't concede any expected goals. But when you don't score, they remain a hypothetical. We always talk about the what ifs, the ifs, ands, or buts. But at a certain point, if you don't capitalize on it, it doesn't matter. Potential is only good if you can realize it. There's a whole lot of guys who thought they were going to be great, who had a lot of potential, who weren't ultimately able to do anything with it. And I'm not ready to make a declarative statement about the fate of the Oilers on November 19th of 2024, but it feels like there's something that needs to be rectified here, both in terms of style and in terms of mindset. Because right now, what the Oilers are doing is not working consistently enough that they can count on it. And this is a team that had sky-high expectations. Teams that win the wild card aren't teams that go all the way. The last team in this format, the Panthers a couple years ago, 2 years ago, when they lost to Vegas, they were the 8th seed in the East, and they were able to make it to the final. But it's hard to do when you are that low in the bracket because you don't have home ice. You're playing better competition each round. It's a real challenge. So we're going to take our first break of today's loss episode of Locked On Oilers. And when we come back, we're going to go dive into the 2 Montreal goals and the Edmonton scoring chances on a shot map coming up right after this break. We are all driven by the search for better, but when it comes to hiring, the best way to search for a candidate isn't to search at all. Don't search, match with Indeed. If you need to hire, you need Indeed. Indeed is your matching and hiring platform with over 350 million global monthly visitors, according to Indeed data, and a matching engine that helps you find quality candidates fast. Ditch the busy work. Use Indeed for scheduling, screening, and messaging so you can connect with candidates faster. And Indeed doesn't just help you hire faster. 93% of employers agree. Indeed delivers the highest quality matches compared to other job sites, according to a recent Indeed survey. The thing I love about Indeed is that it is constantly evolving because it is leveraging over 140 million qualifications and preferences. So the more you use Indeed, the better it gets. Join more than 3.5 million businesses worldwide that use Indeed to hire great talent. Listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility at Indeed.com/lockedon. Just go to Indeed.com/lockedon right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Indeed.com/lockedon. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? You need Indeed. Thank you to everyone who is hanging out on this Tuesday edition of Locked On Oilers as we are trying to make our way through the work week and whatever quarter season crisis the Oilers seem to be going to. I know that's a relatively new phenomena that typically people have that midlife crisis in their late 30s, early 40s when the reality of adult life has finally sunk in, and as the world's become more tumultuous and anxiety disorders have become more prevalent, that's happening earlier in life, the quarter life crisis. And the Oilers, they don't have a lot of games played. We can take a step back and say, well, they have time. And I know I've been very doomerist at points over the last few weeks that, yeah, you have time until you don't. And it's true. The Oilers do have to eventually start stringing together some good hockey because right now, it's not very good. And most nights they're going to be able to get by with an effort like they had tonight. Pickard was fine. I don't think Pickard was the reason they lost tonight. The Gallagher goal is a double redirect from a sharp angle. I can live with that one. And then the goalie goal is a defensive breakdown. And I understand that Pickard is a backup goalie for a reason. So I'm going to pull up this diagram. That's the word I was looking for. Of the two Montreal goals. So this is my screen. So if you're watching on YouTube, which I highly recommend if you have the opportunity to, because it's going to help you get a better understanding of what we're talking about. So on my screen, I'm using my cursor to indicate where the puck is. So this play, the first Montreal goal, this puck is down low behind the Oilers net. Ekholm is down here battling. He loses this puck, but he gets just enough. He's able to rim this puck up along the wall. It goes up to the half wall. The pinching Montreal defenseman, Mike Matheson, gets to the half wall, and he's able to fire this puck on net. And this puck gets redirected here where F1 is. That's Brendan Gallagher. Evan Bouchard is kind of in the neighborhood, but you don't necessarily want him getting in that lane. And Bouchard does get over. Obviously, this is a static image, so I can't show the circles and the plays moving. But when the sequence starts, Ekholm is behind the net, and he moves this puck along the wall. Bouchard is in front of the net trying to play ostensibly free safety, block shots, not let things through. But this puck dies because Ekholm moves it along on his backhand. The pinching defenseman, Matheson, cuts it off. He just settles and shoots, and the puck gets redirected on the way in. You live with that. That's not one I expect a goalie of Calvin Pickard's stature to make. He's not an elite goaltender. He's a competent backup, and he played reasonably well tonight. And then I'm going to click on over to the Caden Gooley goal, the second goal for Montreal. This play frustrates me a little bit more. The right half wall of the Edmonton defensive zone. McDavid converges on it, and Draisaitl, who starts this sequence off over here, they both converge. McDavid gets here. He gets the puck to the middle here to Draisaitl. Draisaitl loses the puck over here in this mix. He loses the puck over here in this scrum. He doesn't win it because he's focused on trying to leak out towards the neutral zone so they could get the offense because they're losing in this game. The Montreal defenders pinch down, and that's what frustrates me about this one. I understand they're cheating for offense, but when you have McDavid and Draisaitl and Hyman out there with Bouchard and Ekholm, we need to be making more sound decisions. We need to be making more responsible decisions, because when you are in a position like the Oilers, where this is a 1-0 game against a bad team, all it takes is one goal and you are right back in this thing. So Draisaitl cheating for offense, losing a puck battle here, it's frustrating. And then this goal, the Montreal defender coming down, Montreal is able to go D to D. They go back and forth. The defenseman over here, he gets this puck from the middle. He passes it to Gouli, and Gouli's able to get that shot over what eventually becomes Bouchard's shoulder. So if you were to close your eyes and envision this in your head, and I'm going to stop sharing the reason that over the shoulder shot is really prevalent right now in the NHL, if you're on the left side of the ice, where you're going to be if you're a left-handed defenseman, because we want our stick touching the wall. That's why lefties play on the left side, to stop pucks from getting past them along the wall, makes it easier to rim pucks out. When you are skating down towards the net as a left-handed defenseman, the puck's going to be on the outside. It's going to be towards the wall. So if you're on the other team and you're a defending defenseman, what you're typically going to do is you're going to take a knee and you're going to drop down and you're going to reach with your dominant hand on the stick. We know that in Canada, they teach it the right way, where your dominant hand is on the top of your stick. So you're naturally going to be leaning forward with your left hand, and that's how you end up. But you're going to be leaning forward with the stick towards the puck, and because of that, your other shoulder, the shoulder that doesn't have the stick, is going to dip down. And that's why you're seeing that shot more and more, because defensemen are less inclined to go for the check, the physical play. They're more inclined to try and disrupt the shot. So getting a stick out, reaching, and when you reach, as we've discussed a lot here, you don't have as much balance because your weight is forward, because you're trying to reach forward. You are conceding a little bit of your posture, because to reach with one, you're going to have to dip the other. And that's where that goal comes in, because you have an Oiler defender reaching, they're leaning, and that shot goes over the shoulder, and that's it. That's it. So one last thing I wanted to pull up and share before we moved along and headed on to our final segment of the show. I did want to share the Evolving Wild shot map here. So this side on the right is the Montreal side. This side on the left is the Edmonton side. I'm going to click over on my screen here, but you see a good chunk of these Edmonton scoring chances are of the low danger variety. These shots from the high slot above the circles, these are low quality chances, not particularly dangerous. These shots from the top of the circle, you see who's taking them. These are your best shots here. You had a reasonable number of chances, but you lost the expected goals battle to Montreal. I know it's 3.2 to 3.32. It's pretty close, but you lost the high danger battle. You lost the battle of expected goals to Montreal because your best players weren't able to do enough. And look, I understand there's going to be a disparity between the shot tracking websites, how Natural Stat Trick didn't have McDavid credited with a scoring chance, but Evolving Wild does have McDavid credited with a scoring chance there. Either way, you are a team, and I said this on yesterday's show talking about the power play. You have a former 50-goal scorer. You have a former 100-point scorer. You have one of the 10 best defensemen in the world. You have one of the 10 best forwards in the world in Draisaitl, and you have the best player in the world in Connor McDavid. This is not good enough. The offense is simply not good enough right now. We're going to take one final break on today's show. We're going to try and diagnose what exactly isn't working and what the Canadiens were able to exploit so well, coming up next on today's edition of Locked On Oilers. Today's show is brought to you by our friends over at PrizePicks. With PrizePicks, you can win up to 100 times your money with as little as 4 correct picks. PrizePicks is the best way to get action on sports in over 30 states, including California, Florida, Georgia, and Texas. PrizePicks is the best place to get real money sports action. Join over 10 million users and sign up today. Sign up today and get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It is guaranteed. For example, if you wanted to say Nathan McKinnon was going to have more than half a goal in a game, if you wanted to say Evan Bouchard was going to have more than 3.5 shots in a goal in a game, you would head on over to PrizePicks. You would download the app. You would use code LOCKEDONNHL to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Remember, download that app. Use the code LOCKEDONNHL so they know we sent you, and get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks, run your game. Thank you to everyone who is hanging out on this Loser Tuesday edition of Locked On Oilers as we sit here having been shut out by Sam Montembeault. And look, this is the National Hockey League. Anyone can beat anyone on any given night. As much as I like to make fun of the NHL's parity and discuss why I don't think there are a lot of good teams, if you don't show up, you don't play well, even the bad teams have enough guys that they'll beat you. You know, the Sharks beat the Devils last week. The Canadiens beat the Oilers tonight. It's not impossible to pull off the moderate upset. And look, it's the regular season. And the way I'm thinking about this in my head, the way I'm staying rational and level-headed is that they have faced a ton of adversity as a group already. Last year, it starts as bad as it possibly could. You come out of the gate 3-9-1. You fire the coach in November, who everyone liked, Jay Woodcroft, but you had to do something to shake things up, and you really, really got going. And I'm not guaranteeing the Oilers are going to get on a crazy run at any point this year, but facing adversity is good as an athlete. You need that challenge to push yourself, because if you are comfortable, that's where you start to get sloppy. If you are desperate, and we've talked about this, there's drowning desperate versus desert island desperate. Drowning desperate is where you don't want to be. You don't want to be wildly flailing in the open water, burning all your energy, wondering what's in the water near you, how much longer can I tread water, can anyone see me? If you're on an island, at least you can move around. There might be food, there might be animals, the opportunity to get attention by, burning things, Pirates of the Caribbean, Lost, if you will. But those are the two types of desperation in sports. And right now, I would say the Oilers are closer to desert island desperation, that they are in the what can we do phase. Where's our planning? They've really juggled a lot of things around. No Darnell Nurse tonight. Joshua Brown drew in, had a rough night to be blank. Outchanced, I believe, is 8-1 for the game against Montreal tonight. And I'm not expecting Joshua Brown to be a solution of any kind. He's merely a stopgap, and that's what he's supposed to be. He's the 8th organizational defenseman. They have Travis Dermott as the traditional 7th defenseman. But if you have an injury, you're going to need to draw on guys. We've long established that you're probably going to go through at least 30 to 31 guys over the course of an entire season because of injuries and other situations that may arise. But right now, the Oilers are not playing great hockey. The Canadiens made them work really hard tonight for offense. The Oilers kept trying that long stretch pass out of their own zone. It kept getting broken up in the neutral zone. The Oilers kept having to regroup. You keep having to skate that extra 50 feet of regroup. It starts to wear down on you. They talked about this on the broadcast as well. Travis Hickey pointed this out. The idea to dump the puck in without really trying to go and get offense. And Montreal did a really good job of that in the third period of this game, salting the game away. The same way you run the ball on first and second down in the fourth quarter with a lead in football because you want to run the clock. You dump the puck down as soon as you cross the red line. The other team is going to burn at least 40 seconds trying to reorganize and get down to the other end of the ice. You keep doing that over and over, and then you start clamping down at the half walls because they're going for that long stretch pass. And because they're going for that stretch pass, you can intercept it and you can start that cycle up again. And that's what happened tonight. Montreal really made the Oilers work hard for offense and defense, frankly. When you constantly are on your heels, you're turning around, you're going side to side because the other team is cycling you, you can't get to offense. If Draisaitl, McDavid, Hyman, Ekholm, and Bouchard are out there and they can't get out of the zone, they can't get out of the zone. They can't get to offense. They can't do what they do so well because they're stuck playing defense, and we only play hockey 45 seconds to a minute and a half at a time. You're not going to tell those guys after just grinding it out for a minute in your own zone to stay out there. You're not. As good as they are, and you can do that every once in a while. They did that in Game 7 against Florida last year where they played, I want to say, 5 of the last 10 minutes, and by the end, they were absolutely out of gas. But the Oilers are in a weird spot right now. They're absolutely underperforming their talent level. And I said this yesterday, I'm going to say it again now. It feels like they're waiting for something to go wrong in every single one of these games because we're getting shut out. by Montreal. And look, I know Monteba is an above average goalie. He had a nice game. He made a few nice saves, but Montreal is not a good hockey team. When you get in this type of situation where the team you're playing is young, dumb, and has nothing to lose, they're going to look at it as, oh, we're playing the Oilers. We can embarrass them if we play well tonight. And that's what the Canadiens did. They forced the Oilers to work hard for offense. They forced them to say, well, if you want to get a good shot on goal, you're going to have to string together 7 passes in our zone. And if you can string 7 straight passes together without losing the puck, good for you. That's a good scoring chance. And the Oilers are not that patient of a team. They will shoot from the point. They will take those low quality chances. They will funnel pucks to the middle looking for a cross seam pass. And Montreal, to their credit, got them off their game. Edmonton just did not look great tonight. You know, you saw Skinner on the fourth line. You saw the forward lines get jumbled up as the game went along because the Oilers were just looking for anything. And that's my concern. We don't want to go from desert island panic to we don't want to go from desert island desperation to open sea drowning desperation. Because right now, we're still trying to be resourceful. We're trying to find ways to get someone going. But we do this for another few weeks where we can't get McDavid going. We can't get Zach Hyman going. And look, I know McDavid was player of the week. I know he had 8 points last week. But when he's held off the board like this and you defang what makes the Oilers so dangerous, that's a flaw. And the Oilers are predicated on dominating those minutes because you saw it tonight. With those guys, with McDavid, Draisaitl, Hyman on the ice, they were able to do something. When they were not on the ice, there was not a whole lot going on. That is when Montreal was salting this game away 45 seconds at a time. But that'll just about do it for today's edition of Locked On Oilers. I want to thank everyone who makes Locked On Oilers their first listen of the day. Please subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcasts. If you're one of the new people over here who's jumped on since I moved over to Blue Sky as well, glad you're here. If you could leave the show a 5-star review on Apple or Spotify, that would be delightful. If you prefer YouTube, I highly encourage YouTube because I can add more elements to the show over there with the visual medium. We had some diagrams, we had some shot maps, some really useful resources to help illustrate the game. Subscribe on YouTube. I will talk to you guys tomorrow. Until then, let's go Oilers.